There is something intentional about the exact moment you paused, stopped the endless scroll, and clicked on this. It wasn't chance, it wasn't a glitch in the feed, it wasn't digital randomness handing you a motivational pep talk. Something in you, maybe subtle, maybe tired, maybe whisper quiet but stubborn, recognized that this message, these words, arriving in this exact rhythm, were not for the masses. They were for you, the person carrying a specific kind of heaviness, the mind juggling exhaustion and potential, the heart hovering at a decision it hasn't fully admitted to yet. Something inside you felt the click before the brain had time to argue with it. And here's the part that makes this moment fundamentally different from every other piece of content you've watched this year. This one carries a silent expiration date, not because the video will vanish from the platform, but because this message can only reach this version of you once. The you that exists right now. The you sitting inside hesitation. The you gripping certain narratives like safety rails. The you carrying old armor that once protected you but now weighs more than it shields. The version of you that exists next month, older by days, sharper by choices, or dulled by the refusal to make them, won't need this message anymore. Either because you finally heard it, absorbed it, and stepped forward, or because you ignored the signal and hardened a little deeper into the same life you keep promising yourself you'll eventually leave. The window is open, but windows don't stay open forever. Not in life, not in relationships, not in careers, not in identity. Openings are invitations, not permanent fixtures. I know how that might sound at first, like some high-pressure tactic meant to trigger panic and force you into movement, like an ad designed to provoke impulsive life decisions, like a push disguised as empowerment. But let's strip the theatrics away for a moment. I'm not selling you a product. I'm not offering a course. I'm not handing you a step-by-step life reset blueprint. I'm telling you something you've already sensed, deep in your system, but have been negotiating with. You keep saying you'll move when you feel ready, when the timing feels ideal, when you feel more equipped, when you have more evidence, when the stars align into a configuration that guarantees success. But you've already stood at this edge long enough to know this. Readiness is not a prerequisite for change. It is a reward you earn after you begin. The feeling you think you're waiting for is not the green light. It is the dopamine hit that only comes once the first step has already been taken. You tell yourself you're being wise, responsible, measured, patient, practical, and sometimes waiting can be wisdom. Sometimes it is strategy, but you know, if you're honest, that this is not that kind of waiting. This is the waiting that hides fear behind logic, the kind that turns hesitation into a philosophy, the kind that makes you feel like you're doing the right thing by doing nothing at all. You keep saying, I'll leave that relationship when I'm mentally stronger. I'll switch careers when I've saved more money. I'll show up as the real me when life is calmer. I'll build the version of myself I admire when chaos loosens its grip. But life doesn't clear space for you to transform. You clear space by transforming inside the chaos. That is how evolution works. Pressure cracks shells. It doesn't politely knock, and discomfort is not the enemy of change. It is often its first shape. Here is the brutal truth: most people spend their lives trying to soften, reframe, or avoid entirely. Nothing shifts if nothing shifts. Nothing rewrites if nothing rewrites. Nothing becomes different if you refuse to become different. There is no secret lever, no cosmic loophole, no hidden algorithm that suddenly rewards endurance of the same patterns long enough. The universe does not watch you suffer and say, all right, that's enough. Let's deliver something new without requiring a new decision. The universe responds to difference. Change is not compensation. It is causation. Different action, different outcome. No mystery, no miracle math, just mechanics. If you keep living by the same inputs, you'll keep generating the same outputs. If you keep thinking in the same loops, you'll keep emotionally inhabiting the same rooms. There is no timeline where sameness eventually produces novelty. The universe rewards motion, not martyrdom. Let's take a moment to examine how humans actually change. Most people imagine transformation like a dramatic scene in a film. One speech, one breakdown, one moment where the camera zooms in, music swells, tears fall, epiphanies strike, and boom, new person unlocked. But real transformation rarely looks like that. It looks quieter from the outside. It looks smaller while you're living through it. It looks like you choosing one different thing today that you didn't choose yesterday. A micro rebellion that becomes a macro rewrite over time. Think back to the last time your life truly changed. Not when you tried harder at the same thing. Not when you optimized suffering. Not when you recommitted to people-pleasing with better boundaries. I mean the moment where you changed the coordinates of your existence, where the old self and new self could barely recognize each other across time. If you trace those moments back, you'll find the same pattern. There was a decision. It was scary. You didn't feel ready. You didn't have full clarity. You moved anyway. You applied for something you thought was above your qualification. You ended something others thought you should endure. You chose yourself, even though it triggered disappointment in others. You stepped forward without knowing if the ground would hold. Those moments didn't feel heroic while they were happening. They felt unhinged, risky, premature, uncertain, unglamorous, sometimes even irresponsible. But looking back, those moments were the hinge points, the decisions that carried you forward, the moments where you stopped asking the world for permission and gave it to yourself. Most people don't move because movement demands something terrifying. It demands you stop negotiating with reality. It demands you stop requiring permission. It demands you move without emotional guarantees. We think we need confidence first, clarity first, approval first, certainty first. But life works in reverse order. Decision, action, confidence, clarity, reinforcement. You don't suddenly become bold. You take a step and your body registers the evidence that boldness is possible. You don't suddenly get clarity. You move, and clarity rushes in to justify the motion. You don't suddenly eliminate fear. You just stop letting fear be the final authority. That is the difference between people who transform and people who stagnate. Not intelligence, not privilege, not talent, not luck, not timing, participation, motion, willingness. You've been stuck in loops before. You've heard messages like this before. You've felt the surge before, the momentary activation before the collapse back into the comfort zone. We've all done it. But here's what happens when inspiration is repeatedly felt, but not acted on. It weakens. Not because inspiration is weak, but because you trained yourself not to respond to it. You conditioned your system to say, "Thank you for the insight, but we're staying here." That's how numbness is built, slowly, repetitively, quietly. So let me ask you something, not for information, but for participation. A psychological handshake between knowing and doing. I want you to reflect on this internally as you read. What exact condition are you waiting for before you give yourself permission to move? Not the surface answer, the true one, the one beneath logic. More money? You'll never feel like you have enough. More time? You're as busy now as you'll ever be. More confidence? Confidence is born from doing the scary thing. More clarity? Clarity is the side effect of motion. More preparation? Preparation without execution is procrastination wearing glasses. If you're honest, you're not waiting for readiness. You're waiting for fear to disappear. But fear doesn't disappear. Fear gets replaced by evidence. And evidence is earned, not imagined. Let's explore your metaphor of the train station deeper. Imagine yourself standing at the platform again, but this time, see it in detail. The train is humming, engine vibrating, doors open, air pressure shifting, people boarding with mismatched emotions, some calm, some clueless, some trembling, some uncertain, but moving anyway. You're standing there with a ticket, a plan, a justified narrative. But your feet are rooted, because rooted feels safer than moving. And while you hesitate, others board, not because they lack fear, but because they feared stagnation more than uncertainty. The train does not reward waiting. The train rewards boarding. Eventually, the doors close. Not angrily, not dramatically, just inevitably. The train pulls forward, and you stand there with your plans still intact, but your life unchanged. Not because you were unworthy, but because you prioritized certainty over motion. You chose comfort over evolution. You chose the safety of hesitation over the risk of becoming someone who could live the life you secretly want. That is not a moral failure. That is a mechanical one. Life is not moved by theory. It is moved by behavior. You don't become by watching. You become by deciding, then doing. And here's the beautiful twist. Once you finally move, once you actually cross the threshold, once you honor the invitation instead of quietly acknowledging it, this message will not land the same way anymore, because you won't be the same person it was written for. You will have metabolized the lesson, and life will begin asking new questions instead of repeating old ones. So, if this message activated something in you, here is your vow. Go to the comments. Type these words. I'm changing the course. No elaboration, no story, just the statement. Because a truth spoken is a truth claimed. And if you know someone stuck on their own threshold, someone circling exits without stepping through them, share this with them. Ask them to claim it too. Because sometimes change needs to be witnessed, spoken, and registered, not just emotionally understood and then forgotten. Subscribe if you want to stay connected to this work. Support through super thanks if you feel aligned with it. But most importantly, walk away understanding this. You don't need more insight. You need one decision that proves insight can become motion. Not perfect timing, not a fearless heart, not external permission, just movement. Because the train is still at the station, the doors are still open, but the clock is not frozen. The only difference between the one who boards and the one who stays behind is one decision that broke the spell of standing still. You can be that person. You already are that person. You just needed someone to say it in words your body could finally register. You have permission to move, permission to try, permission to fail forward, permission to become. This moment is not for next year, not for someday, not for once things calm down. It is for now. Nothing changes if nothing changes. The loop ends here. The search closes here. And now, you move differently, awake, certain, participating. This message found you, did its job, transferred the spark, and now it lets you go.